Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Simonson, and I want to share some tips with you about what to expect when you travel to China. These are some basic tips. I may get into a couple pro tips, but the general message is this is what you should expect when you travel to China. My little site, startsolid.com, we kind of help support entrepreneurs globally, and we encourage you to check it out and see if we can help you too. Okay, so when I say expect the unexpected, it's true. This chap transporting propane or gas or what have you, not conventional by any normal standard, but hilarious. Also, in the upper right hand corner, I'm not sure if you notice, but that building scaffolding is made out of bamboo. That's still widely used in China today. So, those are some of the fun little novelties you may see. This family, a busy shopping trip at the mall perhaps. I'm not sure where they acquired all of this material, but they're going to get it wherever they're going, one way or the other. Some of the fun packing styles and techniques are very interesting to me, and I love it. This is one of the things about China that makes it really fun. This gentleman has got to get home, got a busy time, big family apparently, a lot of chicken to cook. So another, kind of interesting scene, something very unique, at least in my experience, to China. This guy's just hanging out, and my message again is to expect the unexpected. These novelties, these unique sights and things make all the experience part of the adventure. Nothing to be concerned about, nothing to worry about. Just expect, kind of unknown and fun, unique experiences, and that's the start of any adventure. And I think it's good advice for anybody who's considering going to China. Okay, on the tactical front, here's some of the things that I think are important. One of my most important things is to remind people that we don't drink the water. It doesn't matter if it's Hong Kong, Macau, China. We don't drink the water in most undeveloped countries, and this has to do with your own, constitution. You're not used to whatever may be in that water, and we don't want you to get sick. Even if you're in the shower or brushing your teeth, be mindful of the water. So brushing your teeth, for example, use the complimentary water bottles that you'll find in your room. There's generally 2 of them. You can use that to brush your teeth and refresh yourself, get a little hydration going. But definitely don't use the regular water. It's not going to be the end of the world if you do, so don't freak out. Even in the shower, try not to ingest water when you're showering, and maybe that's just a normal part of your custom in the U.S., Canada, Europe, Australia, wherever you may be from. But don't do it there. Be aware of it and avoid any risks. Prevention is the key, as I like to say. Also, I recommend bringing a universal plug. This will allow you easier access to getting your batteries charged and devices maintaining power and so forth. Having a universal adapter to whatever your style is obviously the best. You can find these at hotels sometimes, but I would highly recommend having your own because they can run out of them or perhaps they don't even have them. So it's always best to be prepared ahead of time. You will have Wi-Fi, so you can stay connected while you're there. And in the recent years, they've even installed VPNs and other methods so that you can get access to things like Facebook or YouTube. Some are actually going through Hong Kong, which is great because you can get wide access. The ones that are actually honed into China and still give you access to YouTube and Facebook are great. And now, if it's China-based, you can even get access occasionally to Netflix, which is nice. If you have, half an hour or so to unwind at the end of the night, you can watch your own shows. So Wi-Fi access broadly available. It can be hit and miss, especially in smaller towns as to the quality, but the better places will generally have decent access to Wi-Fi. Okay, the next thing, which I think is very important, is what I call plan your business and work your plan. So this is all related to your bathroom business. I know it's a weird topic to talk about, but it's got to be talked about. So, for example, public restrooms have no toilet paper. So if you really do want to venture out, and I'll give you some kind of guidelines here in a second, but if you want to venture out on your own and hang out in the train station or the subway or just street areas, you're probably not going to find toilet paper there. Paper products of any kind are sometimes difficult in China to find. We often will end up having to pay for napkins or other paper products at dinner time, for example. So this is a cultural uniqueness. In terms of planning your business, I highly recommend you plan your business to be conducted at your 5-star hotel. or a place that you can predict, nice facilities. Some of the facilities outside won't even have a toilet stool. They have kind of a squatty type of just hole in the ground, and that's normal and common in China. It's not normal for most folks from other countries, unless it's Asia-based, of course. So, recommendation again: plan your business at the hotel. Stick to your plan. If you really are going to be a rogue agent and get out there on your own, then bring some toilet paper with you, because you just don't know what you're going to see out there. And don't expect the quality or the facilities to be similar to what you would expect. And this is why the hotel is your best first choice. And for me, only choice. We will have amazing meals. A lot of people get worried about the food. Some of the best meals I've ever had are in China. If you have strict dietary requirements, I do think that it makes sense for you to think about those ahead of time. However, you're not going to find a lot of people with kind of gluten-free designations on menus or things like that. Vegetarian is easy to live with to the extent that you like vegetables and rice and noodles and things like that. I definitely can say that you will have some amazing meals. Any of the groups that have ever gone with me and when we've done it, we've just had some extraordinarily wonderful meals, both in terms of quality, experience, everything. So don't worry about eating there. You will eat. You will not go hungry. Everybody eventually eats, in my experience. So don't worry about that. It's a unique thing, I think, to Asia, but China specifically. It's not uncommon for foreigners to be asked to take a picture with some of the locals. This happens more in touristy areas, more especially in outlying areas. People in Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, seeing foreigners is not unique or new to them at this stage. But if we're at major tourist attractions where perhaps people from outside the city are there, it's not uncommon to have this. And it's no big deal. I smile, take the picture, and shake their hand, whatever they like. I think it's fun, and again, it's part of the adventure. So don't be surprised if that happens to you. If you're checking a bag in when you travel, hand sanitizer in the larger sizes can be helpful if you're into that. I don't bring it with me, but I want to remind people you can't bring the big hand sanitizer on carry-ons. They'll take it from you. On the trains, we won't have any problems with that, but on your plane flights, you will have a problem with that. So I don't get I don't know, sensitive about this sort of thing. I don't bring it with me, but I know some people are like this stuff, and so bring it. But either you have to bring the small size that is okay for the carry-on, or you're gonna have to check a bag. One pro tip, you might say, is when you're going out and about, bring your hotel card with you, because it will have the name of the hotel in Chinese and in English, and taxi drivers are not very common to have English. Therefore, having this card can get you back home. The same process applies in reverse. When you're at the hotel and you want to go somewhere, you can ask the concierge to write down instructions. They'll write it on a card. You give it to the taxi. He takes you there. Everybody's happy. Again, part of the adventure, but your fail-safe to get home is to bring that hotel card with you wherever you go, because you can always hand it to a taxi driver and you'll need to pay them in cash. But having a few hundred RMB on you, that's renminbi, that's the Chinese currency, also known as the Chinese yuan. This is a smart thing to do anyway. In general, I recommend having at least 300 RMB on you for the unexpected taxi ride, and I always keep my passport on me as well. That's another pro tip. Keeping your passport with you at all times is just a good safety tip. I do recommend bringing or buying extra data for your cell phone plan. The international data can cost a little bit. It's come down way, way low in price in terms of the last 12, 15 years since I've been going there. So it's really affordable for $50, maybe $75 on your plan, I don't know. But you can get good, fast LTE speed, and this keeps you connected when you want to use Google Translate, which is an app I recommend you download. When you want to use Skype, which we'll talk about in a moment. Google Translate, for example, another pro tip, this will actually have a microphone where you can do live voice, speaking, and you speak into the microphone, it'll translate it from English to Chinese, and they can speak in Chinese back to English, and it'll translate for them. It's by no means perfect, but if people speak with simple sentences, it has a high degree of getting you communication versus trying to speak normally. Of course, you can type in English and they can type in Chinese if that's the route you need to go. And they even have a function now that'll do an image. If you see a Chinese sign, you want to know what it means, you can hold the translate up to the image, designate which text you want to translate, and it'll translate it from Chinese to whatever language you want, including English. So it's a very good app. Download the Google Translate app today. Another app to get is Skype. You can call Skype to Skype, but you can also use Skype to call telephones anywhere in the world. This is the least expensive method of dialing a cell phone or a landline. And I would highly recommend having that. Maybe you give $5 to Skype so you have some credit. It's way cheaper to call landlines using that phone, and it's way more convenient. Having this on your phone is a good thing. WeChat is another app you may consider if you don't already have it, commonly used in China. And no matter which of these apps you use, even Facebook can work many times in China now. They all have voice communication, video communication, text communication, and this is important for you to stay in touch. One other little tip, queues are not first come, first serve. So a queue is a line. So if you're standing in line at a restaurant or at a bus or a subway or whatever, it's not uncommon for people to just push on ahead to the front of the line. So don't be surprised by it. Again, I try to say to people, it's a cultural thing. Don't be offended. Just roll with the punches, stand your ground. If we're taking subways with you, then get on the subway when we tell you. Don't stop. Don't be polite. You got to just get in there, because we've seen very close calls on people being polite when nobody else was. So important to know. Different culture. It's okay. Okay, it may be interesting to consider this concept, but during a meal, especially if we're in the large dining areas and not in a private room, burping, slurping, even smoking, not uncommon. After the meal, this is all just kind of part of the experience. As I have mentioned, it's their culture. It's not rude in their culture. It may be rude in your culture, but respect where you're at. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Not saying you have to do it. Not endorsing these things, but be tolerant of it and don't be offended by it, because it's no big deal. It's just part of that culture. Also, out on the street and sometimes even indoors, spitting is not uncommon. There's more and more signs to try to reduce that, but don't be surprised if you hear lots of people clearing their throats and spitting, hawking loogies. It's kind of gross to me, but again, it's a cultural thing, so I want to prepare you to not be surprised by it and be tolerant of it. This is their country. We're visitors, so it's no big deal. Staring, not uncommon. If we're standing around in a group, it's not uncommon for people to just kind of come up and stare and take interest in what we're doing. This is, again, no big deal. It's certainly, no safety issues or anything like that. It's just a novelty to consider and something that's odd, perhaps, but it's okay. For men, I'd say don't wear a green hat. I wouldn't even wear a green jacket or green shirt if I were you. If you really are interested, you can ask me why in the comments or in person if we happen to see each other in China. But I do not recommend a green hat. Also, the perception of yelling is not uncommon. Really, most of the people who you may think are yelling at each other are probably just carrying on a conversation, and it's no big deal. Whether it's Mandarin or I find this more in Cantonese, the tones and the pace and the volume of conversation can be very variable, if that's a phrase. And the perception of yelling is weird, but it's really not that common for them to be yelling. You'll know the difference between kind of a conversation that includes high volume talking and people actually mad at each other. But don't be surprised if you hear loud talking. There's no tipping, generally speaking, in China. So if you're in a restaurant, you wouldn't leave a tip. If you're in a taxi, you wouldn't leave a tip. I've even had restaurants chase me down to leave the excess money before I understood this. And in parts of China, it can be considered rude for you to, try to leave a tip. So it's different culture. Don't feel like tipping is a requirement. I'm sure there's exceptions to this, but in general, this is the concept. Okay, so haggling or negotiating is okay if you're, negotiating to buy product for your private label business or your own brand or what have you. It's also okay at the fake market. This is also known as the knockoff market. Generally, when I go, I try to make a stop there at the fake market because it's fun to haggle and negotiate, and you could find kind of some of the knockoff goods, the handbags, the watches, scarves. It can be a nice little gift thing to take back, and it's a fun experience. I always try to go there. The markets tend to move around a lot because there is some cracking down on these counterfeit goods. So when we find them, we take folks there, and when we can't find them, obviously we don't go. But so far, I have yet to miss it. I know right now in Shanghai they're moving from one location to another, but we already know the new location, so I think we'll be okay. Conversely, if you happen to go to a shopping mall or you need something there, number one, most of the prices at the malls are as high or higher than developed countries like the US, Canada, Australia, EU. So there's no real point to go there for shopping deals. But if you happen to be there and you need something, you will not find success in haggling and negotiating there. So a difference. Okay, so I always remind people to look up the weather before you go. Some areas of China in certain times of year can be really, really cold. Obviously, the farther north you go, Beijing, Xi'an, other places like that, especially in the springtime. But for example, Shanghai in the summertime is super hot and humid, and you should be prepared for it. It'll probably be 90 degrees and 90% humidity. So don't be surprised by that. Some people who are from Florida, which I know people from there, will not find the weather to be that oppressive, and other people from the north will definitely find it to be a shock. So be prepared for the appropriate weather. I say to people, it's okay to really check a bag if you really want to, but I avoid trying to bring too big of a luggage. I try to get everything in a carry-on. I can fit 2 weeks worth of stuff in a small carry-on bag. I know that I'm a very experienced traveler, so that's not the average. But if you're going for any time less than 10 days, try to get into a small checked bag because you're going to have to hustle this thing all over the place, and you don't want it to be a pain for you. Bring comfortable walking shoes. It's surprising how much walking that you'll end up doing, whether it's a trade show, whether it's the airport, whether it's your own hotel, just walking to the subway, walking through town, enjoying the sights. You're going to do a lot of walking. I pick comfort over fashion. That's me, but this is my recommendation. I've been going to China close to 15 years, many, many times, dozens and dozens of times. I don't even know the time, probably more than 50 times, and all around the world as well. And comfortable shoes is a big, big pro tip. As I mentioned earlier, be prepared to hustle your own bags. There's not a bunch of resources, so if you're coming with 5 suitcases and trunks like you're going on a safari, you're going to have a real hard time hustling your bags. So pack wisely, and I would say be compact in everything you bring. Bring some cash in whatever currency you have, US dollars, Canadian, EU, doesn't matter. Bring that. You can change it for RMB, renminbi in China. This is good for walking around money, spending money. Maybe you need a taxi, maybe you need to grab a subway or make some purchases at the fake market. It's okay to try to use a cash machine. It doesn't always work. If you don't warn your bank ahead of time, they'll usually, even if they give you the first transaction, they'll usually block your card from there. So if you're going to go and you want to use your cash machine card, your ATM card, what have you, make sure that you warn your bank, and the same goes for any credit cards you wish to use there. Speaking of credit cards, they're not widely accepted. Hotels are generally okay. Top-notch restaurants are okay. But the fake market, no chance. Probably not the Subway or any real common restaurants. It's just not a big deal to find credit card acceptance there. So be prepared. For those who go on a Start Solid trip share, you don't have to worry about it because we take care of your hotels and your restaurants and any buses or trains, transportation. So you don't have to worry about it. But again, if you want to be prepared in general, this is a good thing to consider. Okay, so we're really down to the last thing I want to talk about, which is air quality. A lot of people ask me, do they need to wear masks? And I know this gentleman's got a gas mask on, but it's really just a costume for China's annual so-called naked run. The air quality is not awesome there, and it's hit and miss. Sometimes we'll see the sun now. It was probably 5 or 6 years before I ever saw clear blue sky or the moon in Shanghai, for example. But you see it more. They're doing more against the pollution. but don't be surprised if the pollution's pretty heavy. I don't wear masks. I never have. I don't think it's necessary. You will see plenty of Chinese people who wear masks, but for the way we travel and the areas we stay in, it's not that big a deal. So don't be concerned about it. I don't really think there's a safety issue. And I'll say one other thing about safety. I know people, they go to, various government websites, and it's like, hey, get these shots, maybe 1 shot, 3 shots. I don't know how many shots they recommend. But I've been going there again for almost 15 years, probably more than 50 times. And I've never taken the time to get any shots. I've never ever had any problems. So I would not worry about it. The safety in terms of general security is very high there, especially when you're in groups, and especially when you're in main, areas. And that's really all I would say, is that there's not that much to worry about, especially if you're with folks who know what they're doing, or that you follow these guidelines. So anyway, my name is Steve Simonson. Our little effort to help entrepreneurs, and you'll see a lot of just free resources on startsolid.com. Check it out. Like this video if you dig it. Comment if you hate it, no problem. Subscribe if you want to hear more. But we're all about helping entrepreneurs. I believe the world needs more entrepreneurs. The world is better when entrepreneurs are doing their thing, and this is kind of my way of helping others learn from my experiences. Thanks very much for listening.